Hello, everyone. I'm Lina González-Granados, and today I'm honored to present you my friend Clarice Assad. Hi, Clarice. How are you?
Hello, Lina. Hello, everybody. So nice to be here with you guys.
Well, actually, this is the first time that I met via Zoom with Clarice, but I feel like I know her for the longest time through her music, and I have fell in love with her music since she sent me uh, her pieces, and I had the enormous privilege with the Louisiana Philharmonic to conduct last week Impressions, which is an absolutely delight piece to conduct. Thank you so much, first of all, for your musical offering. And if you don't mind, I would like to ask you a couple of questions for the audience of the Louisiana Philharmonic for them to get to know you a little better.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, you just told me that you were a pianist and you wrote Impressions in 2008, right?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the story of the piece, because something that you said struck to me, which is that the piece was meant to be unconducted. And as a conductor and a coach, that there's nothing more amazing than a piece that seems that doesn't need you, that it can come seamless to the musicians. For me, it's a privilege to just sit back and just give a couple of ideas for them. But why don't you tell me a little bit about the story of how this piece was born?
Of course. First of all, I'm so excited to be performed by this amazing group of people, and you. Thank you very much. And it is a piece that I wrote for the New Century Chamber Orchestra around the time when Nadia Sonnenberg took on the leadership role of the orchestra. And it was very much like a collaboration for her, like written especially for her. Like we wanted the piece to be, it was her first year there, so she wanted a piece that would showcase the orchestra and her relationship with the orchestra. And because I was there, also my relationship to the orchestra, like what can we all give each other? So it was her idea that we did a piece called Impressions, because it would be the impression of all these people, like coming from the soloist's mind and the orchestra looking at the composer and the composer looking at the orchestra. I think it's a beautiful um, visualization. But anyway, so that's why the first movement has so many different variations that showcase each section, right? So you have a theme, a variations piece, and the theme everybody plays together. The variations go from section to section in a very different way. And then you get to showcase specific people. Like, okay, the violin ones have this very fast virtuosistic passage, but the violins two are a little bit more quirky and fun. Violas have a very haunting, slow movement. And the cellos, I remember, this was funny. The cellos were very, all of them, all the players at that time, very brawny, very physical players. So it was natural that I did this kind of rock and roll variation for them.
I love that.
It just comes up, showcase those guys. And then finally the bass was just one person. So it's one cadenza, each one in a different style. So the cadenza was like very jazzy, the rock and roll variation for the cellos, I think the first variation for the first violins was very much like Vivaldi's, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. With the
Yeah, Vivaldi's
nuance and
passages.
everything.
Yes, exactly. So that's how it was. That's how we conceived the whole piece, and then each movement segued into a different thing, like affection, the second movement. If I'm not mistaken, maybe it's the third. But there's a slow movement, it's a waltz, and that was it was funny because Nadia loved sequences, like predictable sequences that
Nice.
never end. She loved that sound, and I made this like long sequences on purpose because of that. I really
Oh,
could
that's
hope
interesting.
all of the sequence of like the circle of fifths and then you end and then you continue and you modulate and you go to another one. It was almost like a joke that we had between ourselves. Like, I'm going to make this long sequence that you're almost gonna like die because it's so full of like momentum. But yeah, as you can see, I wrote it specifically for them.
And I think you're gonna be pleased, and I think the audience gonna be pleased with the bass variation. There, it's something that you won't expect that he's going to do something different. In my personal taste, my favorite definitely was the viola, and then you have like the second violin one, which sounds like bluegrassy, and then you get that note on the viola that it's so poignant, like transgressing that happiness.
That's
And
fun.
it felt so in a lot of ways I'm studying Shostakovich, and it felt like one of those drones that Shostakovich gets into your brain, and then just he sets the mood, and the mood is a little bit haunting and a little bit sick sounding.
Yeah, yeah.
Or I was like, oh my God, Clarice Shostakovich, Shostakovich, Kaya. I
That's so
love that.
funny.
Yes.
That's funny. You know, when they were rehearsing the piece for the first time, I happened to be there, and they were playing through the variation, the second violin variation, the bluegrass sound, and then the violas came in, and then I think they all stopped and looked at each other, thinking, it's like sounded like an ambulance was coming. They thought it was like a they didn't understand, but it was all part of that, you know, like let's layer each other on top of everyone and see what happens. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the thing is that as an orchestra, there is like this sense of community, but at the same time, the individuals, making sure that they go one on top of the other, making their contributions equally is, I think, what it's beautiful about this movement because it doesn't stop. It's just like a full-time attack.
But this is beautiful also because it's all on Naja. I mean, that was really definitely her vision for this, because as a musical director going on for the first time, she really wanted to have a piece that would showcase the personalities of her players, you know? And of course, it's different from orchestra to orchestra, but in a way that kind of crystallized that orchestra, that version of the orchestra in 2008 forever in the music.
That is amazing. And when I heard that she lived in Louisiana, I was like really, really happy to hear that the connection was even closer than all these, I don't know, 1 degree of separation between all of us, that at the end is the classical music world.
Yeah.
Just another, well, not questions that I would love to talk to you about the Brazilian dance, the samba variation, which is fascinating to rehearse. I think every time I get to rehearse Latin American music with an orchestra of that is not Latin America, we always think that it sounds so easy and it's so seamless, and yet there is a special sounds and techniques that it's required to get that lightness and to get that quirkiness, and I don't want to say flirtatiousness, but like lightness and liveliness of the music. Um, why don't you tell me a little bit about how this movement came to be?
Of course. This piece was, again, my contribution as the composer, my heritage as a Brazilian musician too. And I decided to go with this. It's not even like so much of a samba, it's more of a machixe. It's like almost like a
Yes,
very old time. I stayed
like
like with, yeah, I really liked the idea of sending this piece to the past, you know, like all the music, but they sound very from the past in a way. I don't
hmm
know what
also
made,
like a shoro too. It's
yeah. So
between
yeah,
shoro and machixe.
it's
Yeah.
definitely not Brazilian contemporary music. It's based on
hmm
music from the beginning of the 19th century. So um, I really liked those rhythms, and I thought they would translate well within the string sections, right? Once, of course, everybody got the vibe and the feel for it, because as you were saying, it's not obvious, right? Especially if you play an instrument, string instruments, there are so legato, and they strive for the most beautiful sound their whole lives, and they ask them to make the scratchiest thing. It's not very comfortable, right? And for
hmm
that Brazilianness, you have to be a little bit on the verge of not making the most perfect sound and more
Mhm.
percussive. It's not about beauty, it's about precision. And
Exactly. That is one thing that people don't understand. I think about Latin American music that the Louisiana Philharmonic did actually grab really fast, which is this sense of spontaneity and freshness of the music is not translated to loss of tempo, like loss of tempo, but that it has to be as straight as it's written. You
yeah,
know, the more into the ink, it's where you find the style. You know, if you
true.
see something that is too small, that's, you know, like you don't need that much bow or that much weight. It's just something that people think that because we are some, or this is some a gross generalization, but I find that a lot when I work with Latin American music with non-Latin American musicians, is that they think that because we are effervescent or um, I don't know, extroverted, that extroversion means absolute liberty. And it's the complete opposite. It's like what's written, it's what is, and nothing else. Which is amazing. I mean, it's my favorite one. And it's, I think, the one that I conduct them less, you know, the least.
Yeah, you have to kind
So,
of let go.
absolutely, the art of letting go. Absolutely. Well, Clarice, this is amazing. I think people are going to have a beautiful time with your piece, and I hope they tune in on October 2nd with the LPO music.com. So thank you so
Wonderful.
much for being here.
Thank you.